Good evening. Welcome to Mysteries and Legends of the High Seas. I'm your host, Melissa Angel, and tonight I will be sharing the mystery of the vanishing crew of the Mary Celeste. Our story starts long before our fateful crew vanished. Was she cursed from the very beginning? I will let you decide that for yourself. So sit back and enjoy this mystery of the high seas. The Mary Celeste would become notorious after the event on December 5th, 1872. But some would say that ship was cursed long before that. Built in 1861 on Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, Canada, the ship was originally named Amazon. It launched on May 18, 1861. The first mishap to befall the ship happened on its maiden voyage. Co-owner and the ship's first captain, Robert McClellan, sailed the ship to Five Islands, a rural community in Colchester County, Nova Scotia, to take on a cargo of timber for passage across the Atlantic to London. Unfortunately, Captain McClellan fell ill with pneumonia. His condition continued to worsen. On June 19th, after the Amazon's return to Spencer Island, sadly, Captain McClellan passed due to his illness. After Captain McClellan passed, John Nutting Parker took over as captain. He resumed the voyage to London, on which the Amazon encountered two more mishaps. The first encounter had the Amazon colliding with fishing equipment in the Narrows off Eastport, Maine. The second happened after leaving London. The Amazon ran into a brig, causing the brig to sink into the English Channel. Captain Parker remained in command of the Amazon for 2 years, working mainly in the West Indies trade. In 1863, Captain Parker was succeeded by William Thompson. Captain Thompson would remain in command of the Amazon until 1867. The years that Captain Thompson were in command of the Amazon were quiet. One mate would later recall that, "We went to the West Indies, England, and the Mediterranean, what we call the foreign trade. Not a thing unusual happened." It wasn't until October of 1867 that misfortune would find the Amazon once again. At Cape Breton Island, the Amazon was driven ashore in a storm. It was so badly damaged that her owners abandoned her as a wreck. On October 15th, the Amazon was acquired as a derelict by Alexander McBean of Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. A month later, McBean sold the wreck to a local businessman who then sold it to Richard W. Haynes, an American mariner from New York. Haynes bought the wreck of the Amazon for $1,750, then spent $8,825 restoring it. Making himself captain, Haynes registered the ship with the Collector of Customs in New York in December of 1868. Now registered as an American vessel, the ship was renamed the Mary Celeste. According to superstition, it is bad luck to rename a ship without a proper purging and renaming ceremony. I will go more into this in a future video, as it is very interesting. I could find no record or account of the Mary Celeste having this ceremony done, so I think it may be safe to say she did not. The Mary Celeste was seized in October 1869 by Haynes's creditors, then sold to a New York consortium headed by James H. Winchester. Over the next 3 years, the composition of this consortium changed several times, but Winchester retained at least a half share throughout. Unfortunately, during this time, there are no records of the Mary Celeste trading activities. In early 1872, the ship went through a major refit costing $10,000. This refit would enlarge the Mary Celeste considerably. The length went from 99.3 feet to 103 feet, the width from 22.5 feet to 25.7 feet, and the depth from 11.7 feet to 16.2 feet. A second deck was also added. This increased the tonnage of the ship from 198.42 gross tons to 282.28 gross tons. The consortium, by October 29, 1872, was made up of Winchester holding 6 shares, along with 2 minor investors holding 1 share apiece, and the remaining 4 of the 12 shares held by the ship's new captain, Benjamin Spooner Briggs. Captain Briggs was born in Wareham, Massachusetts on April 24, 1835. He was one of 5 sons of Sea Captain Nathan Briggs. 4 of the 5 sons would find work on the sea, but only 2 went on to become captains. Captain Benjamin Briggs was a devout Christian who read the Bible regularly and often bore witness to his faith at prayer meetings. In the year 1862, Captain Briggs married his cousin, Sarah Elizabeth Cobb. The newlyweds enjoyed their Mediterranean honeymoon on board his schooner, Forest King. The couple would go on to have 4 children: Arthur Stanley Briggs, born September 10, 1865, Everson Cobb Briggs, born January 11, 1869. Sadly, Everson passed October 18, 1869, at 9 months old. After Everson's passing, the couple had Sophia Matilda Briggs, born October 31, 1870. On May 21, 1872, Sarah would give birth to the couple's final child, daughter Edith Percy Briggs. Sadly, little Edith would pass on August 15, 1872, at only 2 months old. Though Captain Briggs had achieved high standing within his profession by the time of Sophia's birth, he had been considering retiring to go into business with his seafaring brother Oliver. They decided against this, and instead the brothers invested their savings each in their own ships. Captain Briggs took command of the Mary Celeste in October of 1872 for her first voyage following her extensive New York refit. The voyage would take them to Genoa, Italy. Captain Briggs made arrangements for his wife and 2-year-old daughter Sophia to accompany him. Arthur would remain at home with his grandmother so he could attend school. Captain Briggs chose his crew with great care for the voyage. In a letter to his mother written shortly before the voyage, Captain Briggs declared himself eminently satisfied with ship and crew. October 20, 1872, Captain Briggs arrived at Pier 50 on the East River in New York City. He was to supervise the loading of the ship's cargo, consisting of 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, also called methylated spirits. Denatured alcohol is ethanol that has additives to make it poisonous and is not for consumption. It is instead used as a solvent and as a fuel. A week after Captain Briggs's arrival in New York, his wife Sarah and daughter Sophia joined him. In another letter to his mother, written on Sunday, November 3rd, Captain Briggs wrote that he intended to leave on Tuesday. He added that, "Our vessel is in beautiful trim, and I hope we shall have a fine passage." On Tuesday morning of November 5th, 1872, the Mary Celeste left Pier 50 with Captain Briggs, his wife Sarah, daughter Sophia, now 2, and 7 crew members, moving into New York Harbor. With the weather uncertain, Captain Briggs made the call to wait for better conditions and gave order to anchor ship just off Staten Island. Sarah took the opportunity during the delay to send one final letter to her mother-in-law, writing, "Tell Arthur I make great dependence on the letters I shall get from him, and will try to remember anything that happens on the voyage, which he would be pleased to hear." 2 days later, on November 17, 1872, the weather eased and the Mary Celeste left the harbor, entering the Atlantic. Over the next 2 weeks, the Mary Celeste would encounter harsh weather. The last log entry on November 25, 1872, Captain Briggs wrote that the Mary Celeste was within sight of Santa Maria Island in the Azores. 10 days later, midway between the Azores and the coast of Portugal at about 1 p.m. on Thursday, December 5, 1872. The brigantine Dei Gratia came upon the Mary Celeste about 6 miles away and heading unsteadily towards the Dei Gratia. Captain David Morehouse took note of the Mary Celeste's erratic movements and the odd set of her sails, causing him to believe something was amiss. As the Mary Celeste drew close, Captain Morehouse could see nobody on deck and received no reply to his signals. Upon receiving no reply, Captain Morehouse sent his first mate Oliver Devoe and second mate John Wright in a ship's boat to investigate the Mary Celeste. When the pair climbed aboard the Mary Celeste, they found the ship deserted. They found the sails partly set and in rather poor condition, with some missing altogether. They also found much of the rigging damaged, with ropes hanging loosely over the sides. The main hatch cover was secure, but the fore and lazarette hatches were found open, with both covers found beside them on deck. The Mary Celeste's single lifeboat was missing. They also found the binnacle housing the ship's compass had shifted from its place, and the glass cover was broken. In the ship's hold, Devoe and Wright found about 3.5 feet of water, a significant but not a worrying amount for the size of the Mary Celeste. On the deck, they also found a makeshift sounding rod abandoned. This device was used for measuring the amount of water in a hold. Checking the mate's cabin, Devoe and Wright found the ship's daily log and its final entry dated at 8 a.m. on November 25th, where it had recorded its location 9 days earlier. According to the log, the ship was 400 nautical miles from that location. The two men found the cabin interiors were wet and untidy from water which had entered through doorways and skylights, but were otherwise in order. Devoe found personal items scattered about Briggs's cabin. This included a sheathed sword under the bed. However, most of the ship's papers were missing, along with the captain's navigational instruments. In the galley, equipment was neatly stowed away. Though no food was prepared or under preparation, there were plenty of provisions in the stores. The eerily silent ship showed no obvious signs of fire or violence. From what Devoe and Wright gathered from the evidence, the crew of the Mary Celeste made an orderly departure from the ship using the missing lifeboat, though the reason for their departure left many questions. Returning to the Dei Gratia, Devoe reported their findings to Captain Morehouse, who in turn decided to bring the derelict ship into Gibraltar, 600 nautical miles away. According to maritime law, a rescued vessel and cargo could bring a substantial amount of money to the one bringing the vessel in. Dividing his crew of 8 men between the two ships, Captain Morehouse sent Devoe and 2 experienced sailors to sail the Mary Celeste. Though the weather was calm to Gibraltar, with both ships undercrewed, progress was slow, with the Dei Gratia reaching its destination on December 12, 1872. The Mary Celeste reached Gibraltar the following morning after encountering fog. The ship was immediately impounded by the Vice Admiralty Court to prepare for the salvage hearings. Devoe would write to his wife about the ordeal of bringing in the Mary Celeste, saying, "I can hardly tell what I am made of, but I do not care so long as I got in safe. I shall be well paid for Mary Celeste." The salvage court hearings began on December 17, 1872 in Gibraltar, under Sir James Cochrane, the Chief Justice of Gibraltar. Frederick Solly Flood, Attorney General of Gibraltar, conducted the hearing. Flood would be described by a historian as a man whose arrogance and pomposity were inversely proportional to his IQ, and as the sort of man who, once he had made up his mind about something, couldn't be shifted. After Devoe and Wright gave their testimonies, Flood was convinced that a crime had been committed. This belief would also be picked up by the New York Shipping and Commercialist on December 21, 1872, stating, "The inference is that there has been foul play somewhere, and that alcohol is at the bottom of it." Investigations of the Mary Celeste found no evidence of foul play to support Flood's suspicions. Reluctantly, he released the Mary Celeste from the court's jurisdiction on February 25, 1873. 2 weeks later, with a new crew headed by Captain George Blatchford from Massachusetts, the Mary Celeste left Gibraltar for Genoa. The salvage payment wouldn't be decided until April 8, 1873. Cochrane announced the award at £1,700. This was about 1/5 of the total value of the ship and cargo. This was far lower than expected, as the award should have been twice to 3 times that amount. This judgment made it clear that Cochrane believed Captain Morehouse and his crew had been involved in some wrongdoing of the crew of the Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste arrived back in New York on September 19, 1873. The publicity she received made her a very unpopular ship. In February of 1874, the Mary Celeste was sold at a considerable loss to a partnership of businessmen from New York. During this time, the Mary Celeste sailed mainly in the West Indian and Indian Ocean routes. She was also regularly losing money at this time as well. In February of 1879, the Mary Celeste was reported at the island of St. Helena due to a medical emergency. The captain of the ship, Edgar Tuthill, had fallen ill and died on the island. Captain Tuthill made this the 3rd death of a captain to die prematurely, furthering the belief that the Mary Celeste was a cursed ship. A year later, in February of 1880, the Mary Celeste was sold yet again to a partnership headed by Wesley Gove. Thomas L. Fleming was named the new captain. He would remain at this post till August of 1884, when he was replaced by Gilman C. Parker. It was in November of 1884 when Captain Parker conspired with a group of Boston shippers to commit insurance fraud. Filling the Mary Celeste with worthless cargo and claiming on the ship's manifest as valuable goods, it was insured for $30,000, the equivalent of $900,000 today. On December 16, 1884, Captain Parker set out for Port-au-Prince, the capital and chief port of Haiti. It was on January 3, 1885, that Captain Parker carried out the plan and ran the Mary Celeste onto a large coral reef between Gonave Island and the mainland. This caused the bottom of the ship to rip out, wrecking her beyond repair. Captain Parker and his crew rowed ashore and sold what they could of the salvageable cargo for $500 to the American consul, and instituted insurance claims for the alleged value. These actions would lead to the truth about the fraud coming out. In July of 1885, Parker and the shippers were tried for insurance fraud. Parker was also charged for willfully casting away the ship. Though they got off lightly, with only having to withdraw their claim and pay back the money they made, Parker's reputation was ruined. However, the Mary Celeste would have her revenge. 3 months later, Parker would die in poverty. One of Parker's co-defendants went mad and another killed himself. Some say it was the curse of the devil's ship that got them. There are many theories that swirl about the vanishing of the crew of the Mary Celeste, from curses, sea monsters, to even aliens. One theory that makes the most sense to me is that something on the ship, perhaps to do with its cargo of denatured alcohol, caused Captain Briggs such alarm that he ordered everyone into the lifeboat, tethering it to the ship until he believed it was safe to reboard. Unfortunately, the line snapped, leaving them adrift at sea, and never to be found. What do you think happened to the Mary Celeste? Comment below and share your theories. I think one of the saddest parts of the story is poor Arthur Briggs, having lost 2 of his siblings and then shortly after losing his parents and last living sibling. I tried to find out more about his life, but was only able to find out that he became a ward of his paternal uncle, no mention of which one, and he eventually married a woman by the name of Margaret Hovey Holmes. I could find no mention of he and his wife ever having children. Arthur died on October 31, 1931, at the age of 66. What would have been his sister Sophia's 61st birthday had she not been on the Mary Celeste with their parents. That concludes this week's Mysteries and Legends of the High Seas. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell too. I post new Mysteries and Legends of the High Seas every Saturday night.